Well, welcome to my latest video, one I don't want to have to do. I have an air handler here I put in myself a few months ago, and when I put it in and I checked it out, I didn't have a trap on the outlet of the pan, and water splashed over and soaked the insulation in the bottom of the air handler. And you can replace the insulation pretty much anywhere in that air handler except the bottom, because on the bottom it has a pan, the splash pan, and there's absolutely no room to get your hand in between the pan and the insulation on the bottom. And I looked over my options, and of course one of the options is the absolutely insane thing of removing the air handler, renting a machine to lower it, and then taking the coil out, having to take the whole system down, remove the coil, remove the pan, replace the insulation, put it all back together again, have to refill the system, and so on and so forth, and that's absolutely nuts. So what I thought I would do, and I'm going to go up my ladder here a little bit. As you see, I drew a rectangle out on the bottom of this air handler, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out right there, which should give me enough room to get my hand in there and pull out all the soaked insulation. There is no way in this area, on this end of the air handler, the way the pan is sloped inside, it's I'll have to take this other cover off and get a better picture of it later on in the video, but the pan is higher here on this end than it is on this end. On this end, there's about zero clearance between the pan and the bottom of the cabinet, so I can't get my hand in there to pull out the insulation. Not enough room to get my hand in there, and I might even be able to get a tool to, to break it up and pull it out, but then I'd never get new insulation back in. So the best way, I think, is just bite the bullet, cut a hole here so that I can get my hand in there, and then I will cover it over later. Get down off the ladder here. I thought of using an abrasive wheel to cut that hole, but it's too close to the pan, and I don't trust myself with being that close to the pan. I could also use a cutoff wheel, a Dremel cutoff wheel, but probably take me 2-3 hours probably to cut a hole like that in there. But so I started out with the drill, as you can see, and that nibbler, and quickly gave up on that, and I switched over to my Dremel with a cutoff wheel. Right there. Going a little faster that way. It's just hotter than hell in this garage right now. And of course heat rises, and I'm up here near the ceiling. This job here, I don't know, you gotta see that, there's water. I'm getting soaking wet as I cut this thing. Because of insulation soaked. Now, if you ever do this yourself, I told you the pan is under here, but there's at least probably about 1/4 of an inch wiggle room so that you don't, cut into the bottom of the pan. And you got to be careful that you don't. But more than likely, if you do hit the pan, all that's going to happen is it'll push it up instead of cutting into it. But anyway, That line there is about the result of about 15 minutes of cutting. Maybe the actual Dremel cutting here was about 10 minutes. This was about 5 minutes, you know, with the drilling of a hole and a nibbling tool to find out that that wasn't going to work. Or it would work, but it'd take me, you know, 10 hours to finish. So let me get back to work. Okay. Thought I'd show you, oops, a little water dripping here, dripping down from it. I only have about a 1/16, maybe an eighth of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch left. I thought I'd show you the success. Here's the deal. My Dremel tool died about an inch from completing this. I had to go off and screw around with the brushes on the Dremel, but I got it done, with the exception of this one little piece left here, and that's that. And I'll have to drop that to the garage floor, and you can see this thing is just soaked. I don't know if you can see it or not. I'm up on a ladder. I don't want to fall off the ladder, obviously, but trust me when I say it's soaking wet. So I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to stop. So I've started pulling out all that junk from the inside of the air handler. I didn't realize how far I got with that piece of insulation I said I put in there, but this is it right here. I might have to pull it out a little bit. Slide it back so I can get the rest of this junk out of here. But I didn't damage the pan in any way, so I'll just continue on until I get all the junk out of there. So this is a little harder than I thought, but I'm working on it. I'm sure I'll get it done. A little earlier, I said I'd get you a better shot of the pan. And here's the pan, this black plastic thing here. And here's the insulation I put in before. And there's the hole. And I'm going to have to pull this insulation out. Stuff I put in before. Otherwise, I can't scrape the bottom here. I need to scrape that old, it's glued down, the old insulation. It's glued down. I need to scrape it off the bottom so that I can get it loose enough to pull it out. So anyway, that's what it looks like. There's the pan, and as you get towards this end, there's little or no clearance between the insulation and the pan, so I need to get all that stuff out from under here. But right now I got a big chunk still left in here, right here, that I have to get out. That's all soaked with water. Alright, so can't do this standing on a ladder with a camera in my hand, so well, there's 99% of it. Some of it's on the floor. The floor's all wet. Everything's wet here now. Water everywhere. I think I got all of it out of there. Probably going to have to get a fan or something up there. I'm going to have to get something up there to dry that out. First, I'll go on up there with an inspection mirror and make sure I got it all out of there. On this end here, on the far end next to the plenum. I may have to fill that in with some foam, expandable foam, and then push the new insulation into it, because I'm not so sure I can slide the insulation in as far as I need to and prevent any condensation. So I'll work that out as I go along. But all of the insulation, soaked insulation, is gone under the pan. Surprisingly, I left a big piece in there. I don't remember doing that, but I laid this over the top of the wet insulation, or at least 3/4 of it anyway. And so all of that was still soaked up there. And last time I used this thing was during the winter as a heat pump, so it wouldn't have showed up, but it's been up there wet like that probably for a year. So remember the traps, guys. Remember those traps. Don't run your air conditioner when it's a negative pressure like this one is. Don't run it without a trap, because you can get the splashing. And that's what I'm assuming mine is, by the way. We're going to do one more test before we close this whole thing up. I've been wrong before. I know that's very hard to believe, but I actually have been wrong once or twice in the last 1,000 years. But just in the event, the unlikely event that there's some kind of a leak or crack or something in that pan, now that I got all the insulation out of it, once it dries out under there, I'm going to take about a gallon jug and I'm going to start filling that pan. Of course, I'm going to block this off, block the trap off so I don't lose any water. And I'm going to fill the pan up and I'm going to let it sit and make sure that nothing is leaking out of the pan. Because if it is, then, you know, no point in putting new insulation in there. It's just going to get all wet again. And by the way, the insulation I'm using is this stuff here. It has exactly the same R value as the stuff we took out of there. I forget what it is, like 3.2, something like that. This stuff is actually made of bubble wrap. And if it gets wet, no big deal. It doesn't damage the insulation, not like fiberglass. So that's the stuff I'm going to use. I'm not going to put fiberglass insulation back in there again. I mean, who needs this craziness? All right, so till the next time. Well, here it is, the morning after, so to speak. And I went up there. I've had a fan blowing on this thing for overnight. And I went up there, and sure enough, it was bone dry. And I thought, well, instead of pulling through the insulation and closing it all up, let me dump some water in the pan and see what's going on. Make sure the pan's not leaking. And, well, the pan is leaking. I got a general idea where it's leaking. Of course, it's leaking where a very inaccessible place. This is the bottom of the pan here. It's leaking under here somewhere. And I got an idea of where it's leaking, but I can't really see it. I have to do a little bit more troubleshooting in this area. Try to localize the leak. And then in this area here, somewhere in this area. And when I get it localized to an area, at least half the pan anyway, I can probably use that product called Flex Seal. It comes in a spray can. It also comes in a liquid form. See if I can put this up here. And see that along that seam line there? No, you can't, because I haven't got the camera up there yet. Let me see if I can get this camera in the pan here. You see that seam right there? It's leaking somewhere in that seam. Right there where the coil meets the pan. Probably in that corner right there where I'm pointing the flashlight. The plan is blow it out tomorrow, and once I'm pretty sure that that's where the leak is, then I'm going to paint in that Flex Seal and see if I can't seal it off and walk away from this thing, because the alternative, I told you what the alternative is. The alternative is pull a whole air handler out of the ceiling here again, and that is unacceptable. I mean, that's like the last resort. So let me see if I can get down and back off the ladder here without killing myself. So hopefully that'll take care of the leak, because I did some serious cutting here too. I had to cut some of this open a little bit more so that I could try to see what's going on. But like all water leaks, you know, maybe it's leaking over here, but it shows up over here. It shows up everywhere under this cabinet. Gets wet here, gets wet there, gets wet over there. So the fact that it gets wet over here tells me that the leak is probably in that area over there, because this cabinet leans, it leans forward, so water would run in this direction here. So if it's wet over there, obviously the origin of the water probably is over there. So I never used that Flex Seal stuff before, but I'll give it a try. Like I said, the alternative is completely unacceptable. Here's another little, had to take off the goddamn it here to try to see where the water was coming from. But alright, anyway, these are my complaints, not yours. I'll let you know what's happening. Okay, I did my, I'll turn on my flashlight here. I did my spraying, you can see in here with the Flex Seal, and I chose white specifically so that I could see where I sprayed. And sure enough, now that it's white, I can actually see the water back here. I can see it dripping. It's right back there in the corner. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it on the camera. Fine. But there's a drip, drip, drip back there. And so now that I know where the leak is, I can concentrate on that. I need to let all this water dissipate first. I just poured the water in there. Let's see. I'm trying my best with the camera here, but I don't know if my best is good enough. Well, anyway, it's there. right in the very fucking corner of this thing. And if I can, now that I know it's way in the corner there, hard to get at. I might be able to get through here with the, what about the lighting in here? I'm up on a ladder too, I don't want to fall off the ladder. But maybe here with the filter, I took the filter out, I might be able to get some liquid back there, some liquid Flex Seal, and seal that off. It's still dripping water. I'll have to wait probably an hour or so for it to stop, and then I'll start painting in some Flex Seal in that corner there. It's probably not dripping. It's not dripping as bad as it was before, I'll bet, because the area is not really wet, and that's what I was looking for. I was looking for water here. Oh well, here's the water. There you go. There's the water that dripped out. Tiny little hole in the corner, way back there in the corner of that drip pan. Unbelievable. Still beats the hell out of taking this whole thing down. You can imagine. I sure as hell didn't want to take this whole air handler out of here again. I might have to use my Dremel and cut back there a little bit more so I can get a little closer into that area. So I'll just let the water clear out, and I'll do my best to repair it. But now that I know where it is, I'll know when it stops. Alright, I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to cut away a little bit more of this bottom panel. I see a crack right in the corner of the pan. You can see it broken away there. Now, how far that crack goes, I don't know. Part of it's inaccessible because it's up against the rail. You know, there's a rail here that the pan is up against. So I'm going to try to seal it off here and hope that it stops the leak. If it doesn't, might have to cut a hole in this plenum so that I can get onto the other side of it. Ideally, the way to seal that off would be from the inside, but the only way you'd be able to get at it would be remove the coil. And there's no way in God's green earth that I'm going to do that. That's the absolute last thing that I would ever consider doing. Right there in the corner. Unbelievable. I don't know if that's showing up on the camera. Hopefully it is. Well, you can see the piece broken away. That's a crack right there. That's where it was leaking the water. Alright, let me work on it. Hopefully. Problem with that Flex Seal is it takes about 3 hours to dry up. And longer if it's thick. If you put it on thick. So it's about 20 after 12 night here. So I'll try to get a couple of coats on it, and hopefully I can get around to the back side of it, and we'll see in the morning if it sealed it up. Wish me luck. Okay, good to go. I just threw I put 3 cups of water through it, and it's not leaking at all. So all I need to do now is pull the insulation through, put all his junk back together, button her up, check her out. Okay, this is the last video. I have this thing on full blast. It's about 2 hours now. Not a drop of water. So, leak's gone. Insulation's working, and that cover up there is just temporary. It's just taped in place, so I don't suck any air in through there. The insulation's been replaced, and looks like all systems are go. So, thanks for watching.